Hello friends, Pony Plays Card Games here, and today I'm wanting to talk about the latest proposed rules update for the My Little Pony card game, which will be Core Rules version 2.0.0. And this is currently in the beta testing stage with Caillou. They've released a PDF in Chinese, which I got shared from Themisto on the Discord server. So huge thank you to Themisto for sharing this so we can have an early look at what they're planning and what Caillou are testing. And I think it all looks absolutely awesome, and just wanted to go into the details of what they're looking at and what they're currently testing out and toying with to help to improve the game. And I think all of it looks like an improvement. I think it's all really cool and addresses certain topics that the community has had some concerns with or confusion around, as well as they're looking at bringing in some new mechanics too. So we're going to go into all of it and how it shakes up the game and why it's so exciting to me. So the first ones, which I'll probably get out of the way because they have about the least impact to us as it stands, would be the new mechanics, which I have translated to jump and enlightenment. So Kushi can be translated to a few things like message or even inspiration. It's a gaining of knowledge, but I think enlightenment felt like it suited the best out of all the potential translations for that one. These are all my translations to the rules from the Chinese text, so you can take whatever you want with a grain of salt for that aspect, as well as the fact that these may not be the final rules. They are working with beta testers at the moment to see how they feel. If you want to give these rules a try and you like them, or you don't, pop some messages down below. I'd love to hear some actual play experience from you all. But the new mechanics, jump is going to be a ability that can be triggered at the start of the contact phase, which is skipped on the first turn of each player, and they kind of emphasize that with new wording, but you'll be able to trigger any number of jump abilities at the start of the contact phase. And the other one that's a bit more interesting, but we don't actually have cards spoiled for jump, so jump could be really cool when they show us. The other one is the enlightenment, which is a secondary ability on a pre-plan. So when you trigger a pre-plan ability that has an enlightenment ability as well, if it is the only plan that you have and you haven't triggered any other enlightenment abilities during that game, you get to use both the regular pre-plan ability and the enlightenment ability. So I'm expecting these to be some bombshell powerhouse effects that you would have to be incredibly lucky to get to pay off, but there has been some new support for pre-plans and being able to stack them in place, so I'm more expecting that's how we're going to see that used. But now we'll get into the really juicy stuff that is much more immediately impactful. Two major changes to the game in positive ways. The first one is that for the person going second in the game, they are now allowed to tap their main character in addition to scene cards to help them pay the cost of Force of Harmony of characters during their first 2 turns of the game. So if you're going second, for your first 2 turns, you can tap your main character in addition to your scenes to help you play cards, which means on your first turn, when you flip up a scene, you start the game with a scene in play, you'll have 3 points to be able to play with, so you could play something nice and big straight off of the bat, which is hugely impactful. And then your opponent has their second turn and they get to contact because they went first. Then it becomes your second turn and you then have 4 points to play with, so you could play something nice and big again. The reason that this has been added is pretty clear, and there was actually recent community surveys in which this was brought up as a topic, is because in the My Little Pony card game, player 1 has an advantage in that on their turn, they have more scene cards than player 2 does, which means that they get to play bigger characters than player 2 gets to play. And we'll grab some scenes and show this as an example. So each player starts, this is player 1's, this is player 2's. Each player starts with one scene. On player 1's first turn, they get a scene and they can play a 2-cost. On player 2's first turn, they become even and can play a 2-cost. Player 1's second turn, they can play a 3-cost and then they get to contact. They have then played a 3-cost and contact while the opponent's biggest character is a 2-cost. Player 2's turn comes around and then they can play a 3-cost. Player 1's comes around and they can play a 4-cost, and the biggest character on player 2's field is a 3-cost. Now, I don't think I need to go over that anymore. Player 1's largest character can always be one bigger than player 2's at the same point in the game. Player 2 is playing catch-up in terms of how big their character gets to be. This does not wreck the game. Don't be super afraid of this. We've been playing with this rule set for over a year now. Some people dislike it because it is an advantage to the first player, but it's never killed it for me personally. I've played this game a bunch and I've always felt quite comfortable. It is an edge, but it's not enough of an edge to really ruin my enjoyment or make me feel like I won't win if I don't roll higher on the dice to go first, you know? But now let's have a look at this with the fact that player 2 will have their main character for the first 2 turns. Player 1's turn comes around and they get the 2-cost. Player 2's turn comes around and they can have a 3-cost, or a 2-cost and a 1-cost, but they get 3 points worth. Player 1 comes around again and they're at 3. Player 2 comes around and they're at 4. Now when player 1 comes around and they're at 3 scenes and they play a 3-5, for example, player 2 has a 3-5 in play potentially. They're given the chance. And so it evens it out for the first 2 turns of the game. And after that, player 1 does get the edge again, but it's less impactful later in the game. Those early turns are super impactful. And so just having that bit of extra rebalancing, player 1 will get the edge to counterbalance the fact that player 2 has an edge early on then, and it all just balances. We're approaching even playing field, as even as a game where someone has to go first and someone has to go second can be. Someone's always going first. Someone will always have an edge for going first. It's just how games work. But a lot of games have made a really decent balance, and I think that this rule is helping for us in this game to approach the tightest margin of edge that we can possibly have by giving player 2 a bit of an edge. Player 1 still has other edges as well, like the fact that they get to attack first, which means they get the first hit. But I really like this idea. I think it's going to be really useful in promoting game balance. And I love the fact that Caillou have listened to the players who have been talking about this and have actually started to take action. This is in beta. They're testing these rules out, looking to add them to being an actual official update. The rules may not end up as this. They might decide that it's too much of an edge, it's not enough of an edge. We don't know yet, but we get to test it out. We get to see what they're working on and enjoy it for ourselves too. So I think that's really cool, and I like where they're going with it. Now, the next update that was the big impactful one, so let's say we have a character here. Characters in the rule set that we have had cannot be replaced. So if you have a character there and you want to play a new character, you have to play it into an empty slot. They are going to be testing out a rule which says that characters now can replace existing characters, which is actually really negative to you doing it in a lot of ways, because you're wasting a whole character. It's a lot of waste to do that, but strategically super valuable to have, because if your opponent has a removal event that could hit a 4 inspiration character, and you know it because they just picked up off of their plan cards or something, you can solidify your board by replacing that preemptively and just keeping your board bigger. If you've got a little 1/2 character and your board's kind of full and you really don't want that because you've got something better, you'll be allowed to just replace it, which is great. And it also clears up something that for me was always kind of weird, which was that your characters could only have one item adorned to them, and you could replace items, but you couldn't replace characters. So now they can just say, if you're playing a card that goes in the adventure area, one item, one character per space, and you can replace them, which is great. Now, these replacements, however, if you are replacing, here we go, there we have it. If you are replacing a character, appear abilities will not trigger. Because this can be such a strategic boon for the person replacing them, because they can dodge out of the way of potential removal or sub in characters in place of ones that would lose in a coming contact if you've managed to get to that point, which is probably early game. If you have a 2/4, your opponent's put a 3/5 in front of you, then you could replace it with something that can actually win that contact. So I see it as being more useful early game, but you will not have appear or farewell triggers during replacement plays. Appear triggers will only trigger when they are appearing into an empty slot. When they are replacing, they are not appearing. And that is completely separate for this game. So if you're replacing something, you don't get the appear ability. You just get the body in that spot. And if you are replacing something with a farewell ability, the farewell ability does not trigger because it was not retired, it was replaced. They are proposing, however, to add in a new kind of ability trigger, which is a when replacing trigger. So that will actually promote you to replace cards to get that benefit. So more really cool ideas of new mechanics to come, and I really like that they are looking at adding new mechanics, because personally I've played enough games to be well and afraid of the concept of power creep, where to try and sell new sets, they release cards that are incrementally stronger at a baseline level. And that kills a game, because if I own a card and I love that card, I want to be able to use it with all the new future sets. I want it to add into this awesome card I have. But if suddenly, instead of 2/4 being the baseline, they release a 2/5, then this is kind of worthless. And I won't be playing it anymore, and that would make me sad. But if they instead add in new kinds of things to do, instead of upping the power of their current existing mechanics and mechanisms, they instead add new ones. And then also, if they do, and when they do increase the power level to try and entice people to keep buying, they have so many different things to increase the power level of that it slows the power creep again. You don't want a game to get bloated with too many mechanics and it just becomes confusing. It's like Magic the Gathering with their keywords at the moment. My goodness, there's so many. You just get lost. They're not approaching that. They are nowhere near that. There is still enough space for them to add even more to this game before it's going to be at all taxing for you. So don't worry about that with the idea of these additions. It's all nice and minimal, but it's also giving them the breathing room to avoid power creep. They're approaching better game balance, and they're also addressing the idea that you could replace characters, which I don't know whether they need that rule to be included, but it is a cool new thing that you could do, and I'm totally not opposed to it. I'm keen to try this. I hope you are keen to try it as well, and if you do, then as I said, please leave a comment down below and tell me what you thought. Leave a like if you liked the video, and I will also be leaving an invite link in the description if you want to come to the Discord server. You'll be able to find the link to the original Chinese PDF if you want to check that out in there. And yeah, you can check it out and enjoy. I hope to see you there, and I also hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye for now.